and hello and welcome. My name is Shelton. For those of you that do not know me, I practice an old style Chinese medicine, referred to as medical Qigong, but I've been studying these internal arts for now over 30 years, and I've been in clinical practice now for 20 years. And thank you so much for joining me for this webinar today on how to break this slump, if you are in a slump, and how to live the life that you're meant to live. Now, we're all meant to live our life purpose, and that's one of the things we are going to discuss in today's webinar. So thank you so much, because especially right now in this day and age, with everything going on in our climatic conditions, post-pandemic, well, I don't know how far out of this pandemic we are yet, political climate, etc. There's a lot of stress out there. And unfortunately, this creates a vibration, and this vibration actually creates inflammation and disease. And so what can we do to pull ourselves out of that? How can we be conscious individuals and show up and really live that life that we were meant to live? So I thought before we get started here, we'd go ahead and do a center and balance meditation. Now, the whole idea of this connecting meditation, and I have this meditation available on iTunes, as well as Google Play, etc. And the whole purpose of this idea for this meditation, is for you to be able to feel your body. We have a saying that the superior doctor is one that can prevent disease before disease sets in. So what does that mean? That means that you become so aware of your body that you can actually feel discord or disharmony inside your body actually before it shows up as physical symptoms and signs. Now, isn't that empowering? Yes or no? I mean, for me, that's empowering. Being able to empower you to be able to feel what's going on and be able to use simple yet effective ancient techniques in order to live that life and be able to rectify any imbalances that you may have inside your body. Okay. So that said, you can do this meditation from a seated or a standing position. And if you're going to be standing, we want you to have your feet out about shoulders width apart. Today, I'm going to actually do the practice from a seated, what we call a Wu Ji position. And my feet are firmly planted on the floor. My sacrum is gently tucked underneath. I'm going to gently tuck the chin. By doing so, it presses up on the crown point, also referred to as the ba hui on the top of the head. And then from there, the tip of the tongue is gently curled to the roof of the mouth behind the teeth, as if saying the letter N. And our breath is in and out through the nose, long, steady, even, and deep. So we want to breathe in and out through our nose. And as we get started here, we're going to gently close our eyes. And as we feel the breath of life come into our sinus cavity, fill up into our lungs, we feel ourselves becoming more connected, calm, and relaxed. And starting with warm oil at the top of the head, at the crown point, you can imagine warm oil or warm water, whatever feels comfortable for you, to begin to flow down through the front of the forehead, touching every hair follicle of the scalp, flowing down into the forehead, the brow bone, eyebrows, and eyes, the temples, the side of the face, the cheeks, the ears, front of the nose, sides of the nose, tip, all the way down through the plethrum and into the lips, the jaw structure, the chin, the neck and throat, flowing and pouring to the upper chest, the biceps, the elbow creases, the forearms, the wrists, the palms of the hands. And I want you to allow for your attention now to feel the hands and the fingertips. And from here, this warm oil continues to flow down, melting down into the chest, the ribs, the flanks of the body, the abdomen, flowing and pouring through the waist and the groin, inch by inch, cell by cell, tissue by tissue. Feel now the front of the thighs, the knees, the shins, the ankles, the top of the feet and toes, all connecting, all flowing off deep into the ground. And just take a moment there to feel the entire front of your body from head to toe. Feel the left and right sides of the body. Feel what's there. Now feeling what's going on behind you. So imagine this warm oil that begins to melt down through the back of the scalp enveloping every hair follicle, every cell. As it flows, you feel behind the ears, the base of the skull into the neck. The shoulders, the triceps, the elbows, the back of the forearms, the wrists, the back of the hands, leading all the way out to the fingertips. And from here, feeling the entire upper back, the mid back, the low back. Feel as this warm oil flows through the low back and into the waist, through the buttocks, the hamstrings, behind the knees, the calves, the ankles and heels. And once again, all connecting, and just allow for this warm oil to flow down deep into the ground. And now feel the entire back of your body, feeling just as much in the back as you do in the front, as well as to the left and to the right. And now connecting to your higher power, your source, whatever that looks like for you. Imagine a white light begins to flow down through the center of your being, invigorating your senses of what's inside of you. This white light envelops the brain. You visualize and feel the right and left hemispheres of the brain, the space between the brain and the skull, the pineal pituitary gland, flowing and pouring from the nerves that connect from behind the eyes to the center of the brain to the inner ear. You visualize and feel your inner ear, the sinuses, the bones of the face, the blood vessels, the capillaries. Flowing, you feel and visualize the upper palate of the mouth, the teeth, the gums, the tongue, the lower palate, touching every vertebra from the base of the skull down to each of the vertebrae of the neck and throat. Feeling the air passageway, the arteries, the bones of the upper chest and shoulders, the fascia, the connective tissue, flowing out through the center of the biceps, triceps. The fascia, the connective tissue into the elbows, now into the forearms. Feel the bones of the forearms, the wrists, and all the small bones and ligaments of the hands and fingers. Feel now as this white light touches every rib, and as every rib wraps around to the spine and the back. You now visualize and feel the heart and the lungs, the liver and gallbladder on this right side of the body. This white light now touches the stomach and spleen on the left, filling up now into the intestines. This white light travels down each of the vertebrae of the spine until it envelops the kidneys. Now into the urinary bladder, the pelvic bone, the sacrum, all the way down to the femurs of the legs, the bones of the legs, the muscles surrounding them, the patellas, the kneecaps, the center of the shins and calves, and all the small bones and ligaments of the ankles, feet, and toes. All connecting, all flowing off deep into the ground. And from there, just allow for your feet to melt into the floor. Like you're standing on a sea, liquid energy comes up about the height of the ankles. And just feel the body inside and out, left and right. Feel the breath. And I want you to take a mental note of how you feel. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel? And then from here, we're slowly going to come back to the present. Slowly open up our eyes. And wow, all right, I don't know about you, but that meditation, anytime that we go inward, that meditation is a simple meditation to bring us inward and help us to really relax our nervous system and really calm our minds down. And this is the whole thing, because how many of us actually live up in our head or actually get stuck in our head? Are you somebody is stuck in your head? Are you somebody who dwells on things, who has anxiety? So if you are somebody like that, then this webinar today is going to be good for you, because you're going to be walking away with some tips and tools that are going to be able to help you. Now, how did I get started in this? How did I make this into a career? You know, when I was in, as you're going to see, you know, I've done all kinds of things. I started to become a butcher when I was 15 and a half. I did my AP studies in art. When I was, I believe as a sophomore in high school, I started doing an adult educational program where I would go to school part-time. as, in high school, but then they sent me and other kids my age to this school called CCOC, where then I got my Class A state brake license, my license for overhauling engines, cylinder head, and reconditioning, tune-ups, and electrical systems. But how did I become a healer? I mean, healer was not, or an instructor of Qigong. This was not even on my radar whatsoever. But here's a little backstory of how I got started. So sit back and enjoy this. Well, I think it's about 9 minutes.
4 minutes.
4 minutes. Oh, we cut it in half. When we break down the word Qigong, Qi is the life force energy that emanates through all living things, and Gong is the skill in which to harness this life force energy, and in this case, in order to improve your overall physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. I did a lot of crystal meth in the day, and by the time I was 17, I had my first heart attack from a meth overdose, and put myself into Taekwondo as a means to change my path, because I realized I was going to end up dead or in prison or both. I started competing right away with Taekwondo. I did my first competition when I got my yellow belt, and anyways, one night before a match, I was kicked in the back, which then dropped me to the ground, and doctor said, Chris, you might be, if you're not careful, you might not ever walk again. My mom was a nurse, and she worked for this amazing chiropractor who father, grandfather, brother, sister were all chiropractors, but also she had studied Chinese medicine and homeopathy, and she had a massage therapist working for her at the time, and they wheeled me in there. And he was a martial artist, and he started talking to me about Qi. Well, now I'm 18 years old, and I'm like, yeah, right. So anyways, I had other health problems too. I had severe sinus problems, digestive problems. I had a slight case of OCD, and I had nothing to lose. I started taking these classes, and back then, this is over 25 years ago, nobody was practicing Qigong, or very few people were practicing Qigong in the United States. And I kid you not, after about 6 months of doing these practices every single day, you just wake up one day and you're like, wow, when did I stop living on the Sudafed and the Actifed, when I started living on the Tums and kale pectate? You don't know when it changed. Like there's not a pinpoint date, but you know that there was a change. And I thought, wow, if a movement, gentle movement, and guided meditation could create this much change inside my body, then there must be something to Chinese medicine. So indirectly, because of the Qigong, that instructor I was training with supposedly was teaching Chen style Tai Chi, and Chen style Tai Chi is a martial art. It's the oldest system of Tai Chi. A lot of people, when they hear Tai Chi, they just think it's what old people do in the park. And so what happened was, after I broke away from him, and then I found my sifu, who I'm still with today, Tony Wong, who really teaches the traditional Chen Tai Chi. I mean, we're directly connected to Chen Village in China, the Hunan province, and I started competing with Tai Chi in tournaments. I've been inside Kung Fu magazine a couple of times, competed at the national level. I was ranked 10th in the US at one point, so I dabbled with that too. And then finally with Sancho, with Kami's fight teams who were introduced to Sancho. Thousands of years ago, before man started to evolve and lose their spiritual centers and pay more attention to the ego, they were enlightened enough to understand how these internal organs function. They were enlightened enough to understand that there are channels in the body, and that there are actually points in the body, and that these vessels and channels and these organs correlate to seasons and correlate to different foods that you eat, correlate to different colors. And so that is the foundation of Chinese medicine, is recognizing that the organism itself and its internal environment is not much different than the external environment. So just like there can be a discord in your external environment, weather-wise or in your personal life, that also can happen on the inside. So when someone says to me, even if it's a disease that I've never heard of before, and they say, can you help me with it? My answer is yes, because I believe that anything is possible. Okay, so that's how I got started. And yes, I grew up in a dysfunctional home. And the part that I didn't talk about, in hindsight, what I figured out as a result of the dysfunctional home, there was abuse and neglect inside the home. And what I didn't realize is those stomach issues, those digestive issues that doctors couldn't figure out what was going on, was as a result, as a physical manifestation of my internal emotional environment, because my home environment, there was such a discord. And so stumbling upon Qigong was such a gift, because for me, it was something I didn't know at the time was going to be my life purpose. I didn't know that it was going to turn out to be a career for myself. But for me, it was something that gave me peace. And for every human being out there, I believe that we all strive for peace. What is the saying? In order to make one's life in order to make one's life peaceful, you first have to make yourself peaceful, right? So it gave me these simple tools. And as my health started to improve, guess what started to happen? I started to realize, like, oh my gosh, like these simple yet profound practices that anybody could do. And that's what I love about Qigong, is that it doesn't discriminate against age, gender, religious or spiritual belief structure, because it is meant for all people to be able to enhance their well-being. So our time together today during this webinar is to be able to give you tools to increase your tolerance for challenge and emotional well-being. And then if you are somebody who feels like that they're stuck in a slump, because right now in my clinical practice, as a result of what we're coming out of, there's a lot of people suffering from severe depression, a lot of people suffering from anxiety disorders, and other health issues too, other inflammatory diseases that have come up, especially during this whole pandemic this past year. So of all the times to dive in deep into something that's so simple yet profound to learn, this is the time. Okay, so what I hope for, or my goal, one of my main goals, is that for this limited time that we are together today, is that you actually feel better by the end of this webinar than what you did before. So that's why I wanted you to take a mental note. Is there anything going on with you right now? When we were doing that center and balance meditation, did you scan your body? Did you have any aches and pains? Did you maybe have a slight nagging headache, or maybe you didn't sleep well the night before or last night? And what I'm hoping for by the end of this webinar is that you see just how simple these profound practices are and how they can create change for you right away. And what we're going to talk about really, and this is the number one killer right now, is how chronic stress could lead to burnout. We're going to actually look at what is burnout, what are some of the telltale signs that you're being burnt out, and then what can you do to rectify it. So yes, so we're going to be giving you these simple tips for to build your tolerance for challenge and to increase your emotional wellness, that will help you pull yourself out of a slump if you're in a slump, or help you rectify imbalances that show up as discomfort, pain, or illness. Okay, so how do we build a tolerance for challenge? Well, it starts within. And I tell my clients, you know, right now we're seeing so many violent acts out there. There's things that we're seeing out there that it's hard to even fathom, but everything's a vibration. And we call that when people get together and destroy things or create violent acts, we call that a collective unconsciousness. This planet for which we live on is a vibration. It's a form of chi. This table for which I'm resting my hands upon is an expression of chi. It at some level, just like us, it at some level even has its own level of consciousness. If it did not, all of its molecules would disperse into nothingness. That's kind of a hard concept to grasp, but we're all vibration. And in order to build a tolerance for change and challenge, because there's changes still coming, we're not done yet. There's still going to be more changes coming. How can we do that? Well, if your vibration is stronger, if your health, we call it in Chinese medicine, if your upright chi is strong, guess what? You have then contained within yourself this battery or this well or this reservoir to handle challenge when it comes up. And, just because I've been practicing and teaching these internal arts for so many years now, one of the misconceptions is that my wife and I just sit at home and eat vegetables all day and meditate. I wish that were the case, but we live in society. We have the same problems that everybody else has. We have drama in our family. We have, illness in our family. We have death in our family. So we have the same types of issues that everybody else has. The only difference is that we have these tools that as these different events come up, then we are able to utilize and tap into these tools. And one of the things about our Qigong teacher training program is that we recognize that the majority of the people that take the course do not want to be instructors. What they want to do is they want to dive deeper into their own body to improve their health and understanding of their own body and how it functions, and gain control over their mental emotional state. Because if you're able to gain control and over your mental emotional state and express your emotions appropriately, guess what? You develop this tolerance and this ability for challenge. So the thing about chronic stress, people don't realize this, but besides a poor diet and burning the candles at both ends all the time, the number one leading cause of death and disease is stress. Now, there's different types of stress. Yes, we could have environmental stress from pollutants. We could have food stress, right, that creates inflammation inside of our body. But what's interesting is that in science and Western medicine, when we talk about disease, a lot of times they'll talk about stress, or they'll just call it stress itself. Now, later on in this webinar, we're going to break down the different types of stresses or the different types of emotions and how they affect different internal organs of the body. But even more importantly, then how do we rectify those? How do we process those emotions? So, when we have a stressor comes in, we have our sympathetic nervous system, and the sympathetic nervous system is meant for the fight or flight. And when we have chronic stress, guess what? That sympathetic nervous system is on all the time. Initially, when God, the universe, the Tao designed our bodies, that sympathetic nervous system was meant to get us out of bad situations. For example, our house was on fire or being chased by a bear. But nowadays, with everything that's going on, and because we're stuck on our phones, we're stuck on our screens, getting bombardment of all this information, not necessarily all positive information. And then what happens is that this further adds to the stress that we have within our homes, within our job, our family circles. So what happens? The stress comes in. We have a reaction to the stress. A lot of times what will happen is that people will push down, especially like frustration and anger and resentment. People will push this kind of emotions down. And then what happens is that when we have those emotions that have been suppressed or not expressed appropriately, it starts to create wear and tear on the body, on the internal organ systems and their corresponding parts that they control. Because a lot of people don't realize that our liver, for example, besides helping to move blood and aiding in digestion, a lot of times when we see eye problems like floaters or flowery vision or eye tremors, that's a liver dysfunction, because the liver influences the eyes. It influences our nervous system, our tendons, ligaments, and sinews. So these organs and their corresponding systems, guess what, get affected. One of the common words that we're hearing right now in Western medicine and science is inflammation. Okay, and I see it a lot where somebody is physically fit, eating healthy, doing what they're supposed to be doing, but still dying of carotid artery disease. This is what I mean of how these stresses actually start to affect our health, our ability, even if we're doing the other things that are considered correct, or things that help to support optimum health. Now our optimum health starts to decline. So then what happens? Because our nervous system is on, we have an increased sensitivity to any kind of stress. How many times or how many people do you know, or maybe yourself, that all of a sudden just blows up at the most minute things, or has road rage, or internalizes it, and the next thing you know, breaks out in skin lesions or rashes or hives, or develops Crohn's disease or colitis or acid reflux. All those diseases, all those inflammatory diseases, is when the stress and the accumulation of stress is built up to where the organism, our bodies, cannot process it. And this is how we start to deteriorate and don't get to live the life that we deserve to live. Okay, so burnout. Wow, what is burnout? Priest and I, we both lived in Silicon Valley in San Jose, California, as well as in Los Angeles or Burbank. And we noticed that most of our clients in Silicon Valley, guess what? They were in the high-tech industry. So we're seeing this even pre-pandemic, we're seeing burnout. And we were lucky enough to contract with Santa Clara County. We were in charge of the 23,000 employees for employee wellness. So we go, I give talks to the social services. road workers, the sheriff's department, the county supervisors, trauma nurses, and doctors on disease prevention and the leading causes of disease. And what we're seeing is that in this count, in the Santa Clara County, and this is not just Santa Clara County, it's all around the world right now, is burnout. What are some of the warning signs of burnout? Well, I was just talking about it. Colitis, Crohn's disease, IBS, acid reflux. Maybe you're not sleeping. Maybe you're waking up between 1 and 3 a.m. Are you somebody that wakes up between 1 and 3 a.m.? Are you somebody that wakes up between 3 and 5 a.m.? Do you know that if you are waking up during those time slots, that it means something? Okay, it's your body's way of knocking on your door saying, listen to me. Or maybe you have distended abdomen all of a sudden, and you eat something like a salad or an avocado, and next thing you know, you're completely bloated. These are signs that you are heading towards burnout. So what do we want to do? We want to reverse the damage by seeking support and then dealing and being able to deal with the issues that go on with our life in a healthy manner. Because these emotions are good emotions because they are barometers for what is going on inside of our environment. So when we are constantly bombarded though by stress, everybody has a different cup or a different well. So everybody has a different ability or resilience, natural resilience to be able to handle stressors. But once this cup gets full, then what happens is that then we start seeing the shutdown. Like I said, we start seeing nerve pain, chronic nerve pain. We're seeing during this pandemic, we saw chronic cases of frozen shoulder and cervical issues and migraines. This was another thing that came up a lot too. Depression, like I said, anxiety. So what we want to do is we want to build up your resilience to stress by taking care of your physical and mental, emotional health. Okay, so this is the fun part for me because a lot of people don't realize this, and this is the foundation of my practice. This is the foundation of classical Chinese medicine. The leading cause of death and disease is emotional trauma. And once again, I just really have to emphasize that emotions are not bad. Emotions are meant to tell us what's going on. For example, a lot of times anger is given a bad rap. But anger naturally, when expressed appropriately, it's there to help us to fight for the underdog, for ourselves to get out of bad situations, to create positive change in the world. So the anger is there for a reason. But when we look at heart disease, our heart is our empress of the body. I'm going to talk about this in a couple more slides here. But anyways, the negative emotions that affect the heart, well, all the emotions actually attack the heart. But abandonment, loneliness, lack of joy, overexcitation, mania, all affect the heart. Now, this is 7.4 million people, and this number is rising. And I think that's what's so fascinating about this chart is that considering modern medicine and all of its advancements, why are these diseases advancing and growing and not declining? You would think that they would decline, but they're not. They're actually on the increase. So affects the heart, 7.4 million people. Diabetes and cancer, the root of those diseases, even if you have lung cancer, the root of it is in the dysfunction of the stomach and spleen. All right, so diabetes, even if you're overweight, you look at somebody that's overweight and you'll say, okay, you may think, okay, well, that's an excess disease. But no, it's not. It's actually an exhaustion disease because now the body has become exhausted. What are the emotional traits that actually cause for diabetes and cancer? Well, demand for nurturing, over nurturing somebody else, not getting that back in return, anxiety, worrying, over intellectualizing, thinking too much. This number is definitely on the rise, and according to the World Health Organization, 1.5 million. But this number has drastically gone up. And also the other thing that we're seeing too is childhood diabetes, which is on the increase as well. So yes, and if you think about worrying, anxiety, what happens when somebody is worried or thinking about something? If they're emotionally eating, then they tend to eat a lot. They tend to use food as a crutch. My father suffers from diabetes and is overweight, and he uses food as an emotional support system. So when we look at these kind of diseases, when we look at diabetes and those types of and different types of cancers, it's these emotional components that are the root factor. Lung diseases. Well, this last year we saw lung diseases, and yes, there was an external virus that entered in, but what we found is that people that were more predisposed because maybe they had diabetes, or they had some other, or they had kidney disease, or they had some other inflammatory disease, that the lungs actually became weaker. Well, your lungs become weak when you have sadness, grief, sorrow, disappointment, and loss, shame and guilt. We see a lot of times in clinic, for example, where a loved one will pass away, and all of a sudden the patient comes in with an unproductive dry cough. The unproductive dry cough is the grief that's actually stuck in the lungs. All right. This also weakens your immune system, because guess what? Your lungs are the first line of defense of protecting yourself from the intrusion of external pathogens and viruses. 3.1 million people. Okay. Nephritis. This one blows me away. Nephritis, which is, if you don't know what nephritis is, it's kidney disease. The negative emotions are fear, fright, and shock. Burning the candles at both ends, not getting enough sleep. So when we talk about shock, it's not just shock that we may experience from maybe abuse or neglect, but it's also, or from burning the candles at both ends, it's also shock from what people are seeing. I guarantee you, first responders, bless your hearts, because you're out there helping us, and what they're seeing at some level attacks the kidneys. But also too, food, in this case here, poor diet, genetically modified foods, processed foods also have to filter through our kidney network. The other thing that we saw through this pandemic was an increase in alcoholism and drug abuse, and that enters the kidneys and liver network. So it's fascinating to me, 2.5 million, and that number is growing too. And what I'm seeing also is that there's more and more dialysis companies popping up all over the Bay Area here, and it doesn't make sense to me. So what is going on? How are these emotions affecting us? Yes, poor diet, eating the wrong kinds of foods that don't align with our constitution will definitely create disease, but why is kidney disease on such a rise? And it's because of how much we're working, how much we're intaking from the media and from our social media, and what's going on around us that actually will weaken our kidney system. All right, this next one here, stroke. I'm seeing younger men and women in their 20s, mid-20s, early 30s, strokes, dying of aneurysms. Okay, what is the emotion? Well, this is a big one, going back to anger, frustration, rage, and resentment, and old anger. 6.7 million people. This number is on the rise as well too. The little eye tremor that we get at the most inappropriate times, normally when you're talking face to face with somebody, and then you have that little, unprovoked, or you think it's unprovoked, little eye tremor, that could be the little warning sign that yes, there may be stress going on in your life. It could be a temporary stress, or that little eye tremor or facial tremor could be a warning of something else yet to come. Like one of the most painful nerve conditions known in Western medicine, trigeminal facial neuralgia, for example. So strokes, we're seeing this tremendously. And again, the anger is meant to be dealt with, not suppressed. When we suppress it, it causes our systems to break down. It causes inflammation inside the body, and it creates our propensity to have these types of diseases. All right, so here's one of my favorite keynote speakers. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. I love hearing his voice. He has such a way of using the English language in a way that touches all people. And one of the things that Jim Rohn says, that's who's in this picture here, is that the same wind blows on us all. It's just the direction of the sail that determines the outcome. Now, I told you a little bit about my background, what I came from. I could have continued to blame my parents, my environment, and played the victim and continued to suffer. Now, don't get me wrong, throughout the years, even after I discovered Qigong, I created more of my own suffering by, veering off into the wrong direction. But I could have played that role out, continued to have health problems, and without any remedies in sight. But what I decided to do was I decided to change the direction of my sail. I decided not to play the victim role or to buy into the victim role. And by the way, the story that you saw is the old story. It's not the story that identifies me. All right, that's really important too. Is your past your identifier? Because if it's still your identifier, this also will create inflammation and disease inside your body. So it all becomes a choice. And what's interesting about these internal practices like Qigong is it changes your vibration. Earlier, I was talking about how the planet's a vibration. Plants are a vibration. The solar system is a vibration. All of us humans vibrate at a certain frequency. And when you start practicing, it's been documented, when you start practicing these mindfulness type practices, then what happens is it changes the vibration, increases the green matter inside your brain. So then if you had your destiny, they actually will say in Chinese cosmetology, thank you. They actually say in Chinese cosmetology that, once a person starts doing these internal practices, even if their destiny was so quote unquote set for them, they now have changed their vibration. Now they can't predict where that destiny is going to go. So the cool thing is, and this is what I found for myself, is that even though I'm doing these practices, I'm feeling good, I don't really see the change. I don't really see the vibrational change until time goes by. Then I look back and like, oh wow, like I used to be like this. I used to be affected by this. Oh, that used to be a trigger for me. So these are just some of the things. So it becomes a choice to change your sail. And when we have tools, this is the key here, when we have tools to be able to understand ourselves at a deeper level, then this helps us build a tolerance for change and challenge. So like I said, the benefits of Qigong are enormous. There's so many things. And one of the things I love about being in clinical practice is that we actually will give Qigong practices to the patients as kind of like prescriptions, quote unquote, for them to do on their own. Because the whole idea is self-empowerment. How can we empower the patient? How can I empower you to be the best version of yourself possible? And that's what these practices do. Going back to the carotid artery disease, one of my favorite case studies that I love to talk about is I had a woman several years ago come in. She was physically fit, and what had happened was that she came in for back issues. And so one of the ways that I'm able to diagnose or assess somebody is by reading a person's face. So as I'm doing her intake, I looked at her and I said, yeah, we'll fix your back, but we have to also deal with the resentment that you have towards men. She goes, well, I dealt with that years ago. So I thought, okay, whatever. So I continued to type her notes or whatnot. And we fixed her back. And then what happened was that she would come in if she got the flu or something, and then finally one day she came in, and something I saw on her face, something I saw on her tongue, and something she said, I said to her, I said, I need you to make an appointment with your primary care physician. I want your carotid arteries tested. She goes, you're crazy. She goes, look at me. She goes, I have almost 0% body fat. I work out 1 to 2 hours every day, and I eat healthy. And I said, well, I'm seeing this legally. I'm putting it by law. I have to suggest you see your primary doctor. I'm putting it into your soap notes, and it's up to you what you do with it. Fast forward 2 weeks later, she said in my lobby in tears, and she said, I want to thank you for saving my life. Both my carotid arteries are 70% blocked. So she's eating right, and if she's exercising, doing the things that they tell us to do. What was the one component that she was not facing? And that was her old angers and resentments. And I'm happy to say that her physician and I worked together. He put her on no medications. We changed her diet, give her more of the Qigong practices, and in 1 year she went back in and her carotid arteries were clear. Okay, so how are we feeling right now? How's everybody feeling? You put it into the chat. I want to know how you're doing, how you're feeling. We're almost done here. But I'm hopeful that you're seeing the picture, you're seeing the bigger picture of how emotions show up as inflammation and disease, and how this challenge and change, because change is bound to happen, and sometimes change creates fear for us. Like we don't want to have changes, right? It's the unknown, right? But how can you build a tolerance for change? So it's not just challenge, it's change too. And if you are somebody who's in a slump, and this is the reason why you tuned into today's webinar, how are you doing? Because we want you to be able to feel and see the connection between your mind, body, and spirit. And so, Master Ni, one of my mentors, he says, by practicing self-cultivation techniques like Qigong 1 or Tai Chi, one develops a sensitivity to the energies constantly circulating within the body and around the body. So again, going back to that meditation, we want you to be your own superior doctor, to where you can feel these organs if they're out of balance before it actually shows up as physical disease. Okay, so there's a mind-body connection, and this mind-body connection we've heard about a lot. John Kabat-Zinn started the mindfulness revolution a number of years ago. Was the first one of the first physicians to see the mind-body connection and how it shows up as inflammation and disease. Other colleagues of his during that time thought that it was absurd. And so John Kabat-Zinn is the one that started writing papers on this mind-body connection. And he started to do meditation, mindfulness, Buddhist meditations in the basement of the hospital and seeing and documenting the results. And back then, not too many papers were being written on the mindfulness, on how mindfulness actually will show up as more gray matter inside the brain, reduce inflammation inside the body. Nowadays, there's numerous papers from Harvard, Stanford, all over the place that are documenting scientifically that we could actually see this connection. Now, the cool thing about the brain is that, several years ago, Chris and I were at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles, and we got to see Deepak Chopra and Eckhart Tolle speak together. And there was a small little table between both of their chairs, and there's a clear glass like this with a rose in it. And Deepak Chopra asked the sold out audience, he says, does everybody see the rose? And everybody nods yes. And he says, okay, I want you to stare at the rose between us. He says, now close your eyes. So everybody closed their eyes. He says, can you see the rose? And of course, everybody said yes, right? He said, now open your eyes. He said, nowhere inside your brain is there a rose. So what does this mean? Our brain is a reflection of our reality. Wow, that was such a deep connection it made for me. Like, wow, the brain, because science has been trying to discover for years, hundreds of years, science has been trying to discover where our consciousness is, and it's not in the brain. This is the really cool thing about what Deepak had said. Okay, actually, where it does reside is in our heart. There's a group of scientists in Santa Cruz, actually, I believe in Felton, right over the hill from us, called HeartMath, and the first group of scientists that are now scientifically proving that our consciousness is here in the heart. And so when I talked about earlier about the different emotions and how they affect different organs, well, if you think about it, if you're overexcited about something, it affects the heart, right? But if you're grieving something, what happens? Your heart hurts and then weakens your lungs. If you become angry at something or frustrated or hateful at something, what happens? Your heart races and weakens your gallbladder and your liver. If you become worried and anxious over something, your heart races and weakens your spleen and your pancreas and stomach. If you're fearful about something or something shocking you see or experience, your heart races and it weakens your kidneys. So this group of scientists proved, and actually there's videos out there now of when someone gives a sincere hug, both hearts actually move a little bit closest together. So we have a saying that the heart is the emperor, empress of the body. It will dictate how much of an emotion will be expressed and suppressed. Now, grant you, how much will be expressed or suppressed also is based upon your environment for which you grew up in. So family lineage, heritage, whatnot, how your parents and grandparents dealt with emotions. Did your parents tell you, I love you? Did they tell you how much you meant to them? All these types of things. Did your parents maybe have unhealthy relationships? All right, so these are all the types of things that mold and start to shape how we're going to express or suppress our emotions. So I guess as we start to come closer to the end here, the truth about stress reduction is that our minds are much more powerful than we realize. And I'm really big on quantum mechanics and quantum physics. I love that movie, The Secret. Also, there's another movie about quantum mechanics too, called What the Bleep Do We Know About This World? And what they're talking about is basically what we think about, we bring about. And what we don't realize is that with these Qigong practices, one of the things I say in the practices is that our imagination leads the mind and the mind leads the smooth flow of the Qi. And even if you have no idea what Qi is, just think of it in terms of blood or fluids inside your body. I mean, your blood is your energy. What happens if you're anemic? You have no energy. You don't want to get out of bed. You don't want to do anything. You don't want to speak because you don't have the energy to speak. So your blood is your Qi. They're both contained together, kind of like yin and yang, that they can't be separated. Same thing with blood and Qi. They're both combined or interconnected with one another. And what's great about practicing Qigong, once again, is that it's so simple to do. And once you start to apply these practices, start off with 10 or 15 minutes a day. And if you can build up to an hour practice, fantastic. But 10 or 15 minutes a day, you'll start to see the inner peace. You'll start to see that, oh, wow, I have a much more resilience to those situations. Like that used to be a trigger, or that when that person would say or do that, that used to be a trigger for me. And guess what? It's no longer a trigger. That is not by accident. Because if you release the vibration, you become more, the negative vibration anyways, you become more present. And when you become more present and in the now, then you're not living in the past of that past old patterning that maybe that somebody would poke at you and say or do certain things to get a reaction from you. And that's one of the coolest things about me, because I have to be honest, I was angry. People would tell me, Chris, you're angry, when I was in my 20s and whatnot, early 20s, a teenager. I'd be like, screw you, you're angry. What are you talking about? And what I realized is because I lived in an angry environment where there's fighting, physical fighting, and there's stuff going on quite a bit of the time. Or I was angry also because of the neglect of not having the love and support that a young child needs, because the attention of my parents at the other time, during that time, was in other directions, but it wasn't on me. And so I had all this anger. And nowadays, can I get angry? Am I passionate about things? I am. But the triggers that used to trigger me before doesn't create the same response. And really, ultimately, I have to reiterate this again, is that you really deserve to have this superior life. We have this one life that we know of, and you might as well live every day like it's your last. And really, part of having that life that you deserve is being able to not suffer, and not suffering with mental anguish, and not suffering with physical anguish and disease. So one of my favorite practices, by the way, I was born in the dog year and I love dogs. I love all animals. I actually had a pet squirrel. That's a different story. Maybe we'll do a different webinar on my pets that I have. But anyways, dogs, shake it off. Taylor Swift has a song, Shake It Off. It's so true. It's one of my favorite Qigong practices to do, because do you realize that we're the only animal or mammal, or one of the only animals or mammals on land that does not shake it off when something happens? Now, the dog is happy. The dog is happy to see you. The dog will shake from head to toe. If that dog is angry, that dog will shake from head to toe. Two ducks get into a fight lasts a few seconds. They swim away. The first thing they do is they violently flap their wings. Why? Because they're conscious enough to know that they have this vibration. They may not know that it's anger, but there's this vibration. If the ducks were to hold on to that squabble, no pun intended, if they were to hold on to that energy from that fight or that discord, then like humans do, then they swim around the pond waiting for Bob to come around so they could pop him in the beak when he came around. So animals let it go. Us humans, we don't. So this is the practice, is that you start off with the hands, inhaling and exhaling all the way down. Inhaling all the way up, exhaling all the way down, okay? And you may have a situation. I had a situation about 4 years ago where older half brother had sent a nasty email early one morning to me, and is this condescending, attacking email. And I'm human just like everybody else. And so it really upset me. So I didn't respond to him, but what I did was I shook it off. And throughout the day, whenever that email would pop up in my head, because it would pop up into my head when I was carrying out my day, as I felt the vibration, I would pause and I would shake it off, sometimes several times. Why? Because even though I still have the thought in my head, I want that vibration out of my body. Okay, so try it. It's one of the best practices to do. So the next time your spouse or somebody else makes you angry, shake it off. I'd recommend, though, not shaking off in front of them. That might trigger more of an argument. Well, who knows? Might create some laughter too. So you be the judge on that one. Okay, but then this next one is the healing sounds, because these different organs, once again, connect to different seasons. They connect to different foods, benefit them, different directions benefit them, different colors benefit them, but they all have their own healing sound that also benefits them. And one of my favorite practices to give is a heart healing sound, which is ha, like laughing, because one of the negative emotions of the heart is overexcitation, too much joy. You could actually die of a heart attack from laughing too hard. And if you ever have a laughing attack, what's the first thing you and everybody else does? Everybody goes, why? Because your heart is trying to regain balance. Or let's say you lost a loved one, or one of your pets ran away, or you had to put one of your pets to sleep. You see people coming in and sighing a lot or yawning a lot. Why? Because the heartache hurts. So the sighing is the heart's way of releasing the emotion. So this is the practice, is that you focus on an event that create pain or heartache for you. It could also be anxiety, it could be any of the emotions. And as you inhale, you're just going to imagine a pink cloud filling up into the heart. I want you to feel the circumstance, who's involved, what's involved. Were there any smells? Were there any sounds? What was the environment like? Feel it, bring it all to the present. So I really want you to take off that scab. And then as you inhale, imagine this pink cloud filling up into the chest. And then as you exhale, imagine that circumstance leaving like a dark cloud, going several feet away from the body and down deep into the ground. Now, I want you to do this over and over again. If you're in public, then what I want you to do, and if you're feeling something or something comes up for you, you do it underneath your breath. So instead of you suppressing it, which creates inflammation and disease inside your body and weakens and tears apart your internal organ system, you now have a tool in order to be able to release it as it comes up, and not suppressing it and saying, oh, well, I'll just deal with it when I go home. This is something you do right then and there, especially underneath your breath. No one will know what you're doing. And once again, instead of suppressing, you release it, which then reduces the chance for inflammation inside the body. Okay, so like I said, this is a goofy picture of me. I was a butcher for 21 years. I can't believe it. I have a pension. Whenever I retire, I don't think I'm ever going to retire from this because I enjoy what I do. I enjoy my career so much. So we about 4 or 5 years ago, we signed up with some of Tony Robbins' people, financial people, to help us with our long-term investing and stuff like that, you know, for retirement. And one of the things the guy said to me on the interview, he said, so Chris, when do you plan on retiring? And I said, retiring? Shoot, I plan on doing this till the day I die. He said, well, I have to put a number somewhere so we know how much to invest in what direction. So anyways, I'm kind of joking about that, but it's really the truth. But yeah, I was a butcher. And it comes in really handy because the human body, the anatomy is not much different. Not that I'm chopping up people, but when I touch somebody, you know, I still know what the fascia smells like, tastes like, what it looks like, disease, you know, all the insertion points for the vertebra, like, you know, I can visualize that. But, you know, several years ago, Yosan University, Dr. Mao Xingni was hosting a workshop, and we're taking this class for CEUs. And there's about, I don't know, 60 people or so inside the class. And he said, raise a hand of how many people in here like their job or their career. And what's interesting is that only several of us, or 4 or 5 of us, rose our hands. And he said something that's really profound. He said, you know, before you come into this physical body, you sign a contract with heaven that you are to find your life purpose. Because the only way that God or the Tao could present itself or express itself is living their life purpose. Because if you're living your life purpose, then you're living every day in joy. So every day I'm in a joyous state because I get to help people, I get to serve people. So one of the other cool things, if you're somebody that wants to become a Qigong teacher, like what I did with my career, it's a very fulfilling and uplifting career path. And it's something that maybe you're struggling. I have quite a few Qigong teachers that have graduated the program that have now changed their careers because, you know what, they got tired of being miserable. And I remember this my last few years of being a butcher, especially. I dreaded going to work. I dreaded after the night of my day off, I dreaded going in at 2 o'clock in the morning the next morning. I just dreaded it. And so I'm so grateful and thankful that I get to live out this life purpose and be able to share with people like yourself the healing benefits of Qigong, and also the possibility for, who knows, maybe a part-time career job or maybe a full-time job if that's something that you wanted to do. Because when we find our life purpose, this is really important, we really enhance our well-being. If you're not dreading going into work, if you're not having to deal with the drama of going into work, guess what? It reduces inflammation inside your body and you automatically will have improved health. You're more present, you're more joyful, you get to help others, you get to expand your practice, create possibly your own dream job if you wanted it. And for me, this is the fun part about what it is that I do for a living, is that being able to celebrate and actually visually see the transformations in people's lives, that is so profound. I can't even describe how profound it is. And really, be able to once again have that life that you deserve to have. Okay, so wrapping up here, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are we feeling? I know for myself, I'm feeling dynamite and out of sight. I'm at a 10. I'm at a 10 plus. All right, so just taking that mental note. Okay. Oh, this is really cool. So this is something that we started during the pandemic. Thanks to my friend in Hollywood, Eric, the trainer. He's a Hollywood physique expert. But we started a Chi Club. And so every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, myself, my lovely wife, Parisa Shelton, she teaches Monday and Wednesdays. I teach Tuesday and Thursday. And it's a half-hour class from 8 to 8:30 live on Zoom, though you have the recordings. And I would recommend signing up. Or if you work somewhere where these practices, can be implemented into your job, this is such a great way to start off your day. And so on Monday and Wednesdays, Parisa does a combination of a little bit of gentle Pilates with the Qigong, and myself, I do the Qigong with sometimes mixing in some Tai Chi. And this is great because you're with like-minded individuals from around the world. And if you break down the cost of the class, I had a client today come in and say that she broke down the cost of the class. It's like $1.97 per class. Like, what can you do with that? Like, you can't even beat that kind of deal. So I'd recommend signing up for the Chi Club, or if you know somebody that you're watching this webinar and they haven't heard about the Chi Club, please send the Chi Club to them and have them sign up, because it's really a great opportunity to be able to increase their health and their vitality, as well as, once again, changing the vibration of the planet. Okay, so here it is. We have a Qigong teacher training program, and as I said in the very beginning, really must emphasize that even though it's a teacher training program, this is really for anybody that wants to develop a practice, to dive deeper inside their body. And if there's any health issues going on with you, they'll be able to rectify those health issues. I'm happy to say that a couple of our teacher trainers they decided to make this into a career, actually. Yvette is one of them. When she first found us, we were doing classes for Open Space Authority, and she had RA. There's Yvette right there. RA, she's the one standing to my right, and maybe to your left in the blue shirt. Yvette had RA and was in bedridden for years, and she happened to come out to Open Space because Open Space sponsored us to teach the class, and for the public it was free. And she has tackled her disease, or the diseases she had, and now is out there. I'm so proud of her. She's out there sharing her knowledge of what she went through. And she really had a hard time, and she went through everything scientifically to be able to try to rectify this RA issue, and she couldn't do it. But as a result of the success that she had, she's now out there teaching on her own. We have another recent teacher trainer, Trish, who's out there teaching. Christine Castillo, who's over on the far right. She is now one of our Qigong teachers. She actually translated my book, Qigong for Self-Refinement, into Spanish. And she actually is starting now her clinical practice at our clinic, Morning Crane Healing Arts Center in San Jose. So again, wow. Besides seeing the health benefits and seeing people transform their lives, being able to see people actually make a job change or a career change into something that's uplifting for humanity. Because when we talk about changing what's going on out there, we have to change us first. We have to change ourselves first. As I said in the very beginning, in order to make our lives peaceful, we have to, what's going on around us peaceful, we have to make ourselves peaceful within. So during this Qigong teacher training course, what you get is self-cultivation practices, so gentle mindfulness, movement, and the meditation, all meant to deal with stress and past trauma. A personal practice that you could develop, because now you start to have a deeper understanding. Because during this Qigong teacher training program, we really consider it one of the most comprehensive programs out there, because I'm not just teaching these practices just because it feels good. By the end of the 13 weeks, what will happen is that you will feel deeper inside your body. You will have a deeper understanding of how your body functions, and how these organs function, and how the emotions affect the body, and how food affects the body. So after the 13 weeks, you're going to have this you're going to have this tool set for which to be able to live the life that you're supposed to have. And once again, if you're somebody that wants to become an instructor, then what we do, then we prep people, everybody that finishes level 1 and goes on to level 2, then we prep them to be able to start their own teaching practice. And Jim Rohn, going back to Jim Rohn, talk about the pricelessness of the practice, is that, you know, he says, if you have a book on heart disease and how to stop heart disease, you pay for the book, because you have to pay for the printing, the publication, the editorial, you know, so maybe you're paying $24.99 or $35.99. But he says, but if that book helps prevent you from getting heart disease or reverses the process of heart disease, that book is priceless. And that's what these Qigong practices are. They become this priceless tool for you to utilize and to improve your life. Because people don't realize this, but you're all supposed to live 120 years, and that's dying graceful death and not suffering till the day that you die. So Tom and Michelle here, their husband and wife team, Michelle finished level 1. Tom is now entering into level 2. And this is one of the quotes that he recently made. I appreciated the multitude of ways content was presented. The reading materials, both printouts and books, supported one another. The interview, teacher tips, and peace pep talk videos also supplemented the weekly topic. I really felt like I had heard, read it multiple times, such that I could really grasp the information. Chris and Parisa have a genuine passion for sharing the knowledge and helping the person on their path and their personal growth. So yeah, so Tom, thank you so much. He's actually wants to learn what I do in clinic too. So yeah, so again, this is the joy of life that we all can have. And who wants it? Do you want this joy of life? Everybody deserves to possess it. Everybody deserves to have it. Okay, so our next level 1 teacher training program. Here it is, June 28th. It's an initial investment of $19.95 or 3 monthly payments of $6.96. But what we're adding in there too is 6 months of the Qi Club for free, and then also a private coaching session with myself or with Parisa, which is a $225 value if you sign up by Friday. Okay, so you'll receive all this. But once again, going back to what Jim Rohn said about investing into buying a book, you know, you can't pay for the knowledge, right? You know, there's no price tag that you can put on the knowledge. It's what this investment does for you. And so this is what we're hoping for, is that you invest in yourself, because ultimately, if you don't have your health and you're not living your life purpose and living your life that you're designed to have, then this is a life wasted. And we want to help to uplift everybody so that, once again, that they can live the life that they want to be. So here we are. I said there's going to be an hour webinar here, 5 minutes over. If there's any questions or comments, we'd love to hear it in the chat. So please put it in the chat. And once again, you know, thank you for taking your time and staying on this webinar for this last hour here. Please share this information. Again, it's really about self-empowerment. We want to empower you and understand that disease is reversible. I've seen thousands of patients and served thousands of patients around the world over the last 20 plus years. And I tell you, when other doctors or other practitioners said, you know what, there's nothing that we could do about this, and we create the change, and we partly create the change because then we give the patient or the client these practices to empower them to have this understanding that they are in control, that they have power over what goes on, not disempowerment. So we want to empower everybody's lives. So if there's no questions or comments, thank you once again. My name is Chris Shelton, and my lovely wife, Parisa, she's working in the background, working all the controls and stuff like that, doing her Qi magic there. So until next time, I will Qi you later.